Hi, good morning. Welcome to my living room, a space I don't really film from that much. Such a nice room, it's such a nice day. I've got a massive window in front of me, so I thought this could be a good spot to film this. I filmed one of these 2 years ago, I think. It was my second year of university. As you can probably tell by the title, what I spend in a week as a student at Edinburgh University. Obviously, times have changed. 2 years have passed. I'm now a final year student. My spending habits are different. They've completely changed. I'm a final year student. I've not got a lot of time. I'm quite stressed. So I will sometimes take the convenient route and spend a little bit more money. I've not actually done the calculations, so I might need to do them at the end. I feel like that would be worth looking at. I just assumed I'd do it at the end, but probably would be good to see how much I spent. I can't really speak for the quality of that video. However, I think it would be interesting to kind of compare and contrast costs, my spending, because everything has changed quite a bit since then. I'm living in a different flat. Everything's in general gotten more expensive. I'm also a final year student, so when push comes to shove, if I'm like in the middle of deadlines, I will pay more for the convenience of having something. And yeah, I think the main factor is just everything's gotten so expensive and there's not really much you can do about it. But yeah, all that is to say that these are the costs for as I'm filming, which is 2025. If you're watching this a few years down the line, I can pretty much guarantee that the costs will be higher, at least very different from my costs. Obviously, like this is just like a random week in my life. I'll show you my fixed costs, so those like don't change from week to week, but then my flexible costs can vary quite significantly based on like what week, what point of the semester we're at, all of that. I chose a random week. I didn't really think too much about it because I wanted to do a week like while I was still at university, and we were basically like almost at deadline season, so I kind of had to film it when I did. In hindsight, knowing like how that week went, how much money I spent, like what the week was like, I actually chose a really interesting week because I had pretty big spendings at the start of the week because of like, yeah, I'll get into it, but like fun stuff happening. But then I got really sick at the end of the week, so I essentially spent no money because I literally didn't leave the house for like 2 days. Again, obviously didn't know that going into the video. I actually don't know. I guess the cost maybe would have averaged out because, as I said, I spent quite a lot of money at the start of the week and then barely any towards the end. So maybe that will give you kind of a good idea. But obviously, like, keep in mind that your flexible costs can vary pretty significantly based on like where you shop, what you buy, like how much you go out. So many different factors that I couldn't even account for. This will just be, the way I'm doing it now is literally just showing you a random week in my life and how much money I spent on that random week, and you'll have to assess like based on your own personal spending habits if that applies to you or not. This is also the way that I did it when I filmed 2 years ago. Yeah, I've got everything written down. I tried to be very thorough with my documentation. I'm also using the exact same notebook I used 2 years ago to film that video. So I looked back at my notes for that one so that I could essentially like format this video in the same way I did the last one. Okay, I actually started Sunday, so I'm doing it Sunday to Sunday. No real rhyme or reason, to be honest, why I did it this way, because I usually think of a week Monday to Monday, but I had a bit of spending on Sunday, so maybe it's good to like show a little breakdown of how much I spent, because that was the weekend that I was actually doing fun stuff rather than the weekend after when I got sick. All right, I will be going through my fixed expenses first because those like don't change on a monthly basis, and then I'll go into how much I spend on every individual day of that week. I guess worth noting also is, even though this is like a random week of my spending essentially, especially if you're like coming from abroad, if you're an international student like me, it's interesting to see how much things cost, because for me, like some things back home are cheaper, but then some things are more expensive. Like it's just really interesting to see how specific like product categories vary, and how much you can expect to spend on specific services and stuff. So I think kind of the day-by-day itemized breakdown is more useful for that maybe than like a broad overview. Yeah, I think if I actually wanted to do like a helpful what I spend in a week that is relevant for like a weekly budget, say, I would probably have to track my spending for a month and then kind of divide it, or even longer, because obviously there's like so many things that you buy at the start of a semester and then you like use throughout, you know, like it's really hard to determine how to film one of these videos. So this is just like the easiest way I thought that would make sense to show you exactly what I spend on a specific week. And yeah, I think I've covered the fact that this will vary greatly depending on so many different factors that I can't even begin to cover right now. All right, let's get on to my fixed expenses, because these are probably the ones that are like easiest to track and figure out. So the big one my rent. I spend £650 a month per rent. This is the most I've paid the last 4 years. If you look back, I was paying way less for rent, and I've moved like every year and it's increased every year. It's a lot of money to pay for rent, but also unfortunately it's not. I know so many people who are paying so much more money for rent than me. So if anything, I wouldn't really expect to pay £650 if I'm being perfectly honest, unless you know someone who's already got a flat here where their rent is like decently low. If you're renting straight off the market, I would not have my hopes for £650 if I'm being perfectly honest. So £650 a month, that is £162.50 per week. Hell of a lot of money. And I lived in a flat with 4 other people, so it's like a 5-person flat. Yeah, shared kitchen, shared bathroom, all the things. I've always lived in shared flats. I love living with flatmates. So yeah, I would probably say £650 is like a pretty low benchmark, unfortunately, of what you can expect to pay. I know a few people here and there who are paying like around £500, which is what I paid in second year. Those are usually people who've lived here for a while. It's kind of hard because housing is so difficult in this city and it's so expensive, but yeah, there's not much more you can. I've got so many videos covering flat stuff in Edinburgh, so definitely have a look there if you're interested on more specifics about Edinburgh flat. Next, spending. Utilities, that's the electricity, the Wi-Fi, all of that. I pay all that as like a lump sum each month, and that is £55 a month. So £13.75 per week. My gym membership is £28.99 per month. I no longer go to the university gym, which was quite a bit cheaper, I think, but it's just so much farther from where I live now that I would just never go. So I prioritize actually going to the gym. I still don't go to the gym as often as I probably should, given the fact that I spend money on the membership, but anytime I go is a win. If I can like reduce the tension of actually getting out of the house and going to the gym, I'm willing to pay more for that. So my gym membership is £28.99 per month, so $7.25 per week. I also pay for iCloud. I pay $2.99 per month, that is 75p per week, and I pay £10 a month for my phone, so that's £2.50. I believe I have like 5 gigabytes of internet and unlimited phones and text, and that's like more than enough for me. I've had a few months where I've been traveling where I used up all the data I've had, but other than that, like for everyday use, that is more than enough for me. And those are essentially my fixed expenses. We do have like a family Netflix and Disney Plus and Prime plan, but I don't pay for those. I just leech off other members of my family who have them, which I'm very, very grateful for because that's less money to spend for me. So my fixed expenses, my fixed weekly expenses, like benchmark of what I need to spend to like live in Edinburgh, have a flat, have all my basics covered, not including food, is £186.75 per week. I can't remember how much I was spending before. Actually, let me have a flip through. Actually, I have my numbers here. I was spending $143.20 for fixed expenses. So yes, it is a bit of a jump, but like not as high of a jump as I thought it would be, if I'm being honest. Rent is the main one that has jumped up, but $186.75 is my total for fixed expenses. Now, let me get on to how much I spent for flexible expenses. Oh, one more thing that's probably worth mentioning. That week, one of our fridges was broken. So essentially, we have 2 fridges in our flat because there's quite a few of us, but for that week, one of them was broken, so we were all essentially shoved into one fridge. So I don't do this on a weekly basis. I definitely don't do like a weekly food shop. I would like to. Some weeks I do though. If I'm able to, if I have the time to, I would do like a big food shop at Lidl or Aldi, and that would definitely lower my costs. If I have the time to do that, I definitely do, and that saves me a lot of money. But because this week we basically didn't have much fridge or freezer space, I couldn't really do that. So one thing you'll notice, I did several small food shops, even a few little shops, which is very, very atypical for me. Like if I'm going to Lidl, I'll probably go once a week and do like a big shop, which I went a few times this week just because of like that situation. I will say though, living farther away from Lidl, currently live the farthest away from Lidl than I ever did, it definitely increases your expenses quite a lot, because I'm a lot more tempted to go to like my corner shops, to Sainsbury's, Tesco's, whatever, like the smaller, more expensive ones, and I go to them a lot more often. It's just a lot more convenient after a long day at university to go to Sainsbury's on my way home and buy whatever 3 or 4 items I need for dinner that night, rather than do like a big weekly shop at the start of a week. And like it adds up because the things in Sainsbury's and Tesco's are a lot more expensive than they would be at Lidl. But again, that's just like the price you pay for convenience. I went to Lidl twice this week, which is quite surprising because I pretty much never do that. If I do go, I'll go like once every 2 weeks or so. And then my spending definitely increases in those other shops. The fact that our fridge was broken meant that I couldn't really do like one massive shop, which is probably what I would have done if I had gone to Lidl on a regular day. Yeah, so that's just a little context, I guess. I don't even know what my point is really with this. I guess I'm just trying to explain that the place you shop and how often you shop greatly determines your weekly budget. In like first and second year, I would pretty much exclusively shop at Lidl because it was a lot more convenient, a lot closer, and a lot cheaper. But now I don't do that as much. Yeah, if you need convenience, if time's kind of a valuable resource, as it probably is in final year for most people, you'll end up spending a bit more money in order to help with that. Let's get into it. So Sunday, which is where we'll start. Morning, I had so much work to do, didn't really have time for breakfast, didn't really have food at home for breakfast. So I went to Greg's and got 2 vegan sausage rolls, and I paid £2.60 for that. Then we had a cinema day. So after a long, intense day of work, we went to see Minecraft in 3D. I don't go to the cinema like super often. I've been like a few times this year. Because we saw the film in 3D, that meant it was a bit more expensive. So the ticket was £12, and I love my cinema snacks. If I'm going to the cinema, I go all out with snacks. So I went to Tesco's first, and I spent £6.70 on a bunch of snacks there. And then in the actual cinema, they also have a Ben & Jerry's stand. So I paid £3.49 for a scoop of ice cream. And then after the cinema, we went to Spoons. We were just really tired. We just needed more socializing time, I guess. And I spent £4.82 for a drink there. And I needed a few things from Superdrug. The next day was a very, very exciting day, which I'll get into in just a second. But I just needed a few bits to get ready. I spent £9.27 at Superdrug just buying a few little makeup bits. Or what was happening on Monday, this is where I spend a lot of money. This is a very atypical purchase. This happens once a year. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen this week for this particular reason, but I guess it is interesting to see some of those costs. So a very cool thing about university is that if you're part of societies or specific courses, they usually host a ball at the end of the year or at some point in the school year. The architecture one is usually towards the end of the term, and it is the most fun thing ever. I love the architecture balls. They're just so much fun. It's just like a very special night to celebrate your course friends, just like everything you've accomplished. So much fun. I actually wasn't sure if I should technically include this cost for this week because I technically bought the ticket like weeks prior, but I felt like that was a really expensive dinner I was having that I paid a lot of money for. So I thought it would be unfair to not mention this cost because it was like dinner and entertainment for the night essentially. So the ball tickets are expensive. They were £75, and that is roughly what you can expect to pay for balls. Some of them even more, some of them a little bit cheaper, but like I'd say £75 is roughly the average of what you could expect to pay. My ticket was a little bit cheaper because I have a membership for Architecture Society, so my ticket was a tiny bit cheaper. I think the non-members one was £80, but like roughly that's what you can expect to pay. And that is why I had all these little like makeup bits to pick up at Superdrug the day before. So I needed food. My plan was to essentially like not leave my flat at all on Tuesday, so the day after the ball. So I went to Co-op, I bought some food for that day, but also preemptively for the day after, just in case I didn't want to leave my flat at all. I got like all the greasy, oily foods so I could have like a nice proper breakfast. I got like hash browns, veggie sausages, all the things, and I ended up spending £12 and 3p. Again, the hope was that Tuesday would be a no spend day, but that didn't end up happening. I wanted to give myself the option of not leaving the flat if I so chose to the next day. Then I was going to get drinks for the ball, but then I forgot at Co-op. So on the way to the ball, I ended up getting a bottle of cider, and that was £2.89. And then I thought that was it for the spending for the night, because obviously we had the actual dinner and like the ball venue stuff and the after party all included in that £75. I forgot I made a cash payment when I was writing down the payments from my bank app. That was not on it. I ended up getting chips after the ball, but I didn't have any money on me, as in I didn't have any pounds on me, and it was cash only. For some reason, I had euros stuffed to my wallet. Don't know why, but I did. I was able to pay in euros, so I ended up paying €5 for the chips. I don't even know what the conversion rate would have been. I'm pretty sure they normally cost £4, £3.50. I don't really know. I really wanted chips on my way home, so I was just grateful to have the €5, paid that, and got my chips. Tuesday was supposed to be my no spend day. I was supposed to stay in all day, literally bed rot. One of my friends thankfully kind of got me out of bed after I had a nice restful morning, a lovely breakfast. We just went out for a little walk in the meadows, which was honestly so nice because the meadows are so lovely, so sunny now. I actually ended up getting a free coffee, which was the best thing that could have happened that day, honestly. There's a cafe called Leaf and Bean in Edinburgh, and essentially every day they give out a free coffee to a different person. Like they put a name in their window, and if your name is on the window that day, you get a free coffee. And that magical day, the free coffee was for Julia. So on that beautiful magical day, I got a free coffee. Didn't really want to spend any more money that day. That being said, I realized I was running out of oat milk and I desperately needed some. So I picked up a carton of oat milk from Sainsbury's for £1.50, which is actually a pretty good price. I think it was on sale or something. So I think that was a worthy purchase. Then on Wednesday, my only spending, I did another food shop. You think I'd be done after I literally did one on Monday, but I guess I ate all of that food. Went to Lidl. From what I remember, I got quite a few things. I ended up spending $15.92, and then I had to top up. There's just like a few things that I don't really like buying from Lidl, like their avocados, for example, not very good. Or just sometimes they just don't have things that I need. Like Lidl's quite hit and miss sometimes. So I went to my local corner shop and ended up spending £2.55 on little extra bits. Then on Thursday, I actually spent no money. I am trying to remember what I did on Thursday. I think I had a big deadline, so I literally just like stayed in the flat and did nothing all day. Yeah, I just did a lot of work, I think, and I spent no money. Then Friday, I went to Lidl again. I think we were low on toilet paper and a few other things, so it made sense to go to Lidl. And again, spent way more money. I spent $11.34 at Lidl that day. So again, this is what I meant with the food shops. Like from what I remember, if I were to do like one big Lidl shop, I would have spent like probably around £30, and I would have like 2 massive bags. That's not really possible anymore, or with our fridge broken, couldn't really fit stuff, but also that stuff's heavy. Like when I lived closer to Lidl, it would be more doable to do like a massive shop, but when I have to walk quite a while, like I don't really want to do that. So yeah, I did another little shop, spent $11.34 that day, again because I didn't really meal prep. I guess I had lunch out and I went to one of like the local university food spot called Nile Valley. It's just like a very studenty lunch spot right in central campus. They do wraps. I got my favorite. I got my regular order, which is a hummus, aubergine, and falafel wrap. Very nice. And that is $5.50. I get that way too many times this semester than I would care to admit. And then I also went to Lidl that day, did another food shop. Actually very good that I did a bigger food shop, because I think I was getting quite sick on the Friday, and then Saturday my illness like got quite bad. I didn't leave the house all of Saturday or Sunday. I stayed in bed most of the time, barely ate anything. I got super sick. So yeah, no spending again. I feel like this week was kind of strange because, as I said, so much spending at the beginning of the week, but then as deadlines got very intense and obviously I got sick, the spending decreased. I mean, sometimes when I'm sick, I will like order in, and obviously that kind of increases my budget. If I'm working a lot, don't have time to cook or prepare food, I'll probably spend more money on food like out. That being said, like I showed you with the wrap that I like to get, it's $5.50. It's more expensive than if I were to make it at home, but also like you can get cheap food out, so it is doable. I think this is just like a pretty decent overview of like what you can expect to spend on some items. I've not calculated my flexible expense. Put the final total up here, and yeah, that is the total that I spent this week. Yeah, definitely an expensive week, despite the fact that I literally had 2 days where I didn't spend any money. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is like a representative week. That being said, I think it's interesting to look like how much you might spend, even if it's like an expensive week in your life. If you compare this video, this total, to my one from 2 years ago, costs have definitely increased. Some ways those are completely out of my control. Like I can't really control the fact that rent has gone up. For flexible expenses, you can definitely spend less. Like that is very doable. Like I said, with the food shop especially, I think that's something I could definitely cut down on, but I don't because of convenience and the fact that I'm a final year student and I don't have a lot of time. Yeah, I mean, you can always cut down, but I guess for me it's also trying to maintain a balance of knowing that this is my final year in Edinburgh, my final few months, if not weeks, living in this city. I want to experience it. I want to do all the fun things, and a lot of the time those fun things involve spending money. I think I've given a lot of disclaimers, but I think when it comes to topics of money, people can get quite testy and like judgmental. I hope it's really helpful for someone to have this like open communication about how much it realistically costs to be a student in Edinburgh, a fourth year, a final student. Yeah, but I think that is roughly it. Again, final total for the week. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see from me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.